Chapter 8. From Breakdown to Breakthrough. I have said that living as the false self and deeply immersed in the world of separation and limitation, I unknowingly wore a protective mask of arrogance to hide my deep fear of being invisible and of no value to the world or anyone. I have also explained that this emanated from my relationship with my parents, particularly my mother, and that throughout my life I unconsciously attempted to get the conditioning my mother represented to see me, so that I would feel safe and loved, the natural feeling you experience when you know who you really are. Everything I did was tainted by this longing and manifested in many ways, predominantly through multiple relationships with women. If a woman showed even the slightest interest in me, I clung to that attention like it was oxygen to a drowning man. To control these obsessive feelings of being noticed, again unconsciously, I needed to somehow tie down the experiences, and marriage was the way the false self chose to do this. As a result, I was engaged twice without marriage, married 4 times, and had 2 common-law marriages as well, only because I was not yet divorced. I also talked marriage with a number of other women who just looked sideways at me, and never did I question this behavior, nor did I see myself as dysfunctional. This may be of some value to you if you are ever seeing yourself as a little slow in shifting from the false self to the truth. Your false self can be incredibly clueless where its deep conditioning is concerned, with virtually everyone noticing something is a little crazy except for you. Some people might even try to be helpful in their own way and say something like, "But you took the plunge several times. Maybe you should have a look at why you're doing that." And for some time, in my case, a very long time, your response might be, "Huh? What do you mean?" I jump from relationship to relationship, sometimes juggling several in an attempt to control my life and smother my immense fear of invisibility to somehow make it conform to my neediness to be seen. And within each relationship, there was absolutely no intimacy at all. The masks I used to appear above my unworthiness and my deep fear of abandonment had me running in circles in an attempt to keep my personal value safe and protected. To be intimate with anyone, with life itself, you must be vulnerable, which represents an extreme form of weakness to the false self. In truth, vulnerability is the essence of power, since it declares openly, "I have nothing to hide. Because of myself I am nothing, no thing." Without intimacy, it's impossible to experience true joy, because in joy you're authentic and transparent, not afraid of exposing anything because you are not attached to anything or any special identity. I carried this same tendency into my work in an attempt to control my many agendas, needing to know where everything stood and how everyone was thinking and acting, just in case something might fall apart. I hardly had time to breathe. In fact, I was a very shallow breather for many years, and remember often hyperventilating when involved in many intense business activities where I was desperately trying to handle results and bring about certain outcomes. It's irrelevant that I did eventually so-called succeed in business, because I was swimming in a swamp of misery every moment until finally I had had enough. When you have had enough, when you finally reach the stage of saying, "I choose freedom no matter what," the mirrors will show up that you pay attention to. For me, that was Ingrid and our 6 years cloistered away quietly deep in the beautiful and majestic mountains and fjords of Norway. Ingrid was a perfectly clear mirror for me, free long before I showed up, and being exposed to anyone who was still blocked and who still resisted the truth the mirror reflected was an intolerably low and painful energy to endure for any length of time. Consequently, she asked me to leave 6 times during the first 4 years. In most cases, leaving didn't mean moving down the street. It meant going back to Canada or some other country. That alone should have gotten my attention. But as I said, it took 6 departures before my false self finally had the breakdown that became my breakthrough. The breakdown happened when I was staying with an elderly lady in Surrey, UK, that I had met at Heathrow arrivals area 7 weeks before. A friend from the internet had given me a place to stay for a month in London, and as we met for the first time, I noticed a jade ring on someone's hand that caught my attention. Jade had always appealed to me, and the ring pulled me right over to the lady wearing it. We had a friendly chat for a few minutes, and I exchanged emails with her. Later that month, we met at the National Gallery in London, and after I explained my situation, she generously offered me a temporary place to stay while I sorted things out. Talk about synchronicity. That's how God orchestrates our experiences when we're in the flow of life, despite my stubbornly clinging, deepest conditioning still existing. The back and forth experiences of feeling unceremoniously thrown to the wolves over and over again was shattering, but that was exactly what was required to shake the real me free from the shackles of my conditioning. The false self interprets such behavior as incredibly cruel, but it took genuine, unconditional love to do what Ingrid did. As long as I have known her, she's flowed in perfect harmony with the God she is, and that meant pulling my false self limb from limb until it surrendered fully to the self. While on that last exiled experience, I found myself alone one cool, misty day in October, trudging along a country lane weeping uncontrollably for over an hour. I wanted to die, the pain was so intense. But die to what? Die to the body? Die to the pain? No. Die to the illusion I finally recognized. I could bear the heavy burden of resistance to truth no longer. When this insight came to me, all the relationships I had ever experienced to try and get my mother to see me and love me and make me feel safe came rushing through me like a tsunami. It all made sense in a flood of insight. I discussed this with Ingrid through my computer later that day, and a week later arrived back in Norway, fully open and available for whatever I had resisted feeling until then. Over the next few months, I went through many painful episodes of feeling the anger and rage I had buried deep within, not only towards my mother and father, but towards all women in general, as layer after layer of this deep conditioning peeled away. As each wave of agonizing pain subsided, I embraced what had emerged as the God it was, and grace, love in action, transformed it back into the nothingness from which it came. These calm, neutral periods were followed by another and another and another wave of painful feelings, but they came and went quickly because I had said a definitive yes that the self recognized as total surrender. When we arrive at that stage, we are truly ready for the freedom we are, the beauty we are, the love we are, to reveal itself in all its splendor and beauty. Stay down. I used to be like the children's punching bag that bounces right back up when you knock it down. I explained this earlier as an invincibility mask. As an entrepreneur most of my life, I had many opportunities to experience this. Nothing could keep me down, and I got a lot of welcome hero attention from this kind of conduct. Little did I know the opportunities that I missed by not staying down for a while before jumping up and trying again and again. The collective consciousness of separation teaches this kind of resilient attitude is a sign of courage and determination. But who is it teaching? This helps to shape the conditioning that makes up our false self by telling it what constitutes someone who fits in. And to the extent that we buy into these stories, we blend into a world of mildly miserable, unconscious robots that don't rock the boat. That gloomy day in Surrey, while I poured my heart out, I recognized the value of staying down for a while when I fell down. Lying there in the mud of so-called failure, I was able to take an uninterrupted look at myself. And when I looked at what I saw, I began to realize that the ideas I had about right and wrong were just made up by those who had not looked at themselves, not looked within, and then passed these concepts on from generation to generation. So I waited in silence. I waited to see what might come up if I gave it a chance without any conditions. I had said yes to what is, and it was then that I was truly ready to discover who I really am. The discovery was shocking, and suddenly my entire world turned upside down. Everything I had been taught, everything that had programmed the conditioning that defined who I thought I was, revealed itself as false, and having no reality at all. It was an emptying process that lasted for some time, and was really scary, because being nothing was like being dead. But I had shifted my persistence to knowing myself rather than living a lie. This emptying process was like removing filters from my eyes, and it allowed me to gradually recognize who I really am, and had always been. The revelation was magnificent, grand, and glorious, divine, and I realized that everyone was this same nothing something, nothing everything that I am, and that being down had been an enormous gift I had rejected time and again until I had no choice but to accept it. Such is the wonder of the light that lies at the bottom of despair. I have said before, but it bears repeating often, that in the new energy, where every aspect of life is much faster, and the frequency of truth so predominant, it is not necessary to go through long and painful years of resisting truth to finally break down, as I did. You can fall gently into the loving arms of your Mother, Father, God Self, and surrender to your feelings right this moment, in the sure and certain knowing that you'll come through the fire of self-discovery with much help by your side. Yes, the fire is painful, but coming to the fire need not be. And here's a quote by Mooji. Many spiritual practices are pleasant. They don't challenge your identity and its delusion. Therefore, they're attractive to the mind. There's nothing threatening when someone tells you, we're chanting because it purifies the energy and brings you closer to God. It feels nice for people, adventurous and agreeable. But I'm not interested in adventure. I'm here only for liberation, not entertainment for your mind, but the smelling salts that will stun you into awakening.